everyone, and welcome to this episode of Writers Infusion. I'm your host, Susan. I am here with our team at the Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine. We're very happy to be here. This is Jen, Dave, Julie, Ed's off-camera manning the screen behind us, and this is Elizabeth Gillison. Did I get it right? Yes. Our writer, and she's joined us here today with an excerpt of a fantasy novel. And why don't you start with reading the summary and then read the rest of the story?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
So, the summary. Nellie Wars is vaguely aware of her special abilities until living weapon Charles McGarbett breaks into her sheltered life and exposes the truth, that she is one too. He teaches her to control her powers, and together they take on both the light and dark forces influencing their lives. The stranger walked down the town's empty streets. The quiet clung to him like the stagnant breath of a vicious beast. The man was used to noise and colors. Even sunlight failed to fully penetrate the dome arcing above the town, a barrier that crumbled for him like wet sand. It left a dark tint over the identical white-sided houses and their sparse gardens and perfectly trimmed lawns. Now and then, the stranger's focus was drawn to cheers and jeers that came from all directions at once. He dismissed the raucous quickly, his superior hearing searching for clicks and slides that could mean a weapon was drawn, or for angry roars at the discovery of his abandoned motorcycle and the hole it left in Plainsville's precious force field. He took a left off of East Street onto Welcome's Way, the latter being placed at the center of town, nowhere near the one official border patrol station, far from the sight of any potential visitors. It was a major road featuring town hall shops and a small community college. The stranger knew he faced consequences if discovered on locals' ground, but he also knew that his best cover was a sunny social day afternoon. The locals would be busy at whatever sporting event the North and South high schools were hosting. Welcome's Way would be without and unwelcome. The man paused at a statue of a stout man in minister's robes. It shined in the glow of spotlights set along the base. The stranger pulled down his black hood for a closer look at the monument. The brass plates engraving credited a Carson Q. Carson with founding the town and continued to praise his many accomplishments as both its legislative and spiritual leader. The stranger pulled his hood back up and resumed his walk, shoulders slouched. He followed a path made by shadows of the surrounding buildings. He noticed a malt shop. Bold white letters outlined in red declared Plainsville Dairy Bar. A cardboard sign hanging in the window listed shop hours, first day through social day, open 2 p.m. till 20 minutes before evening's curfew, closed birthday. The stranger had never seen a malt shop before. He looked through the large glass windows, noting the red booths lining the walls, black and checkered countertops, and red stools circling a long, shiny metal counter. A few patrons occupied seats. The man wondered about the clientele. He made a few assumptions, based solely on the words bar and malt liquor. The man suddenly realized how thirsty he was. He pulled open the shop's glass door, allowing it to swing shut behind him. Another man paused as he passed by the stranger. The men looked at each other. The local's expression twisted into curiosity. He opened his mouth to say something, but instead chuckled and shook his head. The local exited. The stranger found himself staring at a black sign on a silver metal pole, "Seat yourself." He scanned the shop and decided to claim a stool, seating he was already accustomed to. Another customer at the counter, a man in a white leisure suit and fedora, stopped sipping a bright pink liquid through a straw and leaned forward. His eyes widened as they acknowledged the stranger. "Daddy-o, you a stranger?" The stranger tensed, but remained silent. A fruit fly danced between the two. An older mustachioed man wearing a yellow and red striped shirt beneath a pink apron stood behind the counter. He was drawing an empty glass. "What'll it be?" he grunted at the newcomer. The stranger furrowed his brow. "Psst," whispered the man in the white suit. He grabbed a trifold paper menu from between a napkin dispenser and condiment stand. He handed the menu to the stranger. The stranger read it over. "Sonny, what'll it be?" the mustachioed man snapped. He set down the glass and adjusted his paper pink cap. The stranger was completely unfamiliar with the menu items. Bonnets? Waffle bowls? The man in the suit spoke up again. "Get 'em all. Trust me." He then returned to slurping his pink beverage. The stranger set the menu down. Malt? The mustachioed man stared back at him. Well, Sonny, what kind? Kind? Yes, what flavor? Regular? Snickers could be heard from the remaining patrons, a group clustered in the nearest booth. Never had a malt before, one called out. Vanilla is a popular choice. I'll fix one right up for you, Sonny. The mustachioed man poured milk and powder into a blender. He then opened a freezer and scooped out a clump of vanilla ice cream, and adding that too. Last came a squirt of syrup, followed by a whir of the blades. Within minutes, a tall glass filled with thick white mixture was set before the stranger. He sniffed at the contents before taking a sip. He relaxed as the ice cream combination made its way down his throat. It tasted good. I'll be right back if you need anything, Sonny. The mustachioed man nudged the man in the white leisure suit. You make sure this young man is set now. I'll be back in a moment. Keep him here. The bartender rushed to the back room. The stranger was lost in the sweetness of the malt, amazed that beverages existed that didn't burn. The man in the white suit began to fidget. The fly didn't know the loop passing through the air. The stranger swatted it away. Name's Cool Cat Jazz, and I'm one happening swinger, continued the man in white. Best swing dancer in the area, Daddy-O. Not bad with a bowling ball either. Broke 175 my last game. The stranger ignored him and continued to drink his malt. You really aren't from around here, are you? Cool Cat Jazz asked. The stranger suddenly slammed his hands down onto the counter and kicked over his stool as he stood. Cool Cat Jazz stared at him, fear creeping onto his face. Hey now, didn't mean to offend Daddy-O. The stranger removed his hands, revealing money on the counter. As he pulled down his hood, he said, I'm no thief, not a saint either, but definitely not a thief. Didn't want the group of men who just came in to ruin that for me. Dragged me away before I could pay and all. The stranger turned to face a group of men in their teens. Most wore varsity jackets and a few were in muddy, grass-stained lacrosse uniforms. Who won? Someone from a booth yelled. South Plainsville High, of course, the clear alpha replied. He stood center of the group, the marking of a team captain on his dirty, bright blue uniform. And who are you? His eyes turned to the stranger, bulky arms crossed his broad chest. His broad forehead and square jaw twisted in a sign of disgust, but his brown eyes stayed sharp, attempting to pierce through the stranger. The stranger unzipped his hoodie and tied it around his waist, revealing his own muscular frame and handsome features. His coarse dark hair was pulled back in a sloppy ponytail. His dark eyes returned the captain's fierce stare. The captain almost unclenched his jaw in response to the stranger's many silver piercings running along his ears and tattoo of a ring of roses exposed on his arm. The stranger's muscles bulged beneath the torn-off sleeves of his black shirt. My name is Charles McUrbit, the stranger smiled. And forgive the cliché, but take me to your leader. The teen cracked his neck, then his jaw, then his knuckles. You got him. Student body president, captain of the lacrosse team, and lead usher at services. Charles laughed. Your actual leader. The mayor? Minister Wars. He knows why I'm here, what I came to take back. The teen and his companion stared blankly at Charles. Are you seriously going to pretend that old corrupt sod of a minister isn't running this place from the shadows? The teenagers looked at each other, searching for signs of what to do. So the captain did as captains do and took command. He lunged forward, allowing his fist to make contact with Charles McGarbutt's right eye. The captain winced back in pain. Raph! A female voice called out. Sally Ann, the captain tensed up. A brown-haired teenage girl strode up to him as he stroked his wounded fist. She waved her finger around to say shame before jabbing it into his chest. Was this the emergency? Some unfortunate skipping out on Judd? You know fighting upsets Nellie. Nellie, said Charles. All eyes were on him. Nellie Wars? Sally Ann's jaw dropped. Raph, this man isn't from around here, is he?
So let's make sure that it's...
If you do me a favor, please make sure the camera's running. You know how you can look at it, it says... Looks good.
Think so.
There's no red light. And it made me nervous that there was no red light on this side.
It does it say recording on the screen?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, great.
Bloopers reel.
That's fine. So good job reading.
Yes.
Yeah, it was very good. Yeah. Do you like reading fantasy?
I do.
That's your favorite? I used to read that a lot. Yes, I love that too. It's fun. I guess my first question is, would you consider this fantasy? Is this going to be taking place in more of an other world? Or is it mostly a world that's just like Earth?
It's a lot like Earth. I'm still fleshing out the details of the world. Right now I'm aiming for a little ambiguity.
Okay. Yeah, because these are the first pages, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I think I'd start off with, I like the stranger. He's kind of mysterious, and I like him. And I know you don't have to like your protagonist, but I happen to like him. I don't know. I just kind of bonded with him, so that's a good plus for me. in the very first paragraph, I had a little bit of a hard time picturing what was going on. I saw the stranger walking down the street, and I could picture there was a dome, but even after I read it 5 times, I was a little lost. I think that you can simplify it a little bit. To think, you know, if you put yourself in the stranger's place, walking down the street, exactly what is the stranger seeing? So as he's walking down, maybe he sees a dome covering the town over his head. It just seemed a little confusing to me. Was that just me? It wasn't?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's good. I think that's a good idea. There's a lot going on in that first paragraph. I would say, take your time. Okay, back up, show us the dome. I mean, the first we hear about the dome is him recollecting that it was easy for him to get there. You don't want that to be true. You want it to be like this formidable object that nothing can penetrate, and then somehow is able to come through. So take your time, set that up.
And it's funny how much you can put into one paragraph. So just pick a couple of things that are most important so we can picture it going down. We're in a library, so that's where sometimes we're leaving people in. So, I don't know. Oh yeah, that's great. So, that was my first comment. And I guess if I were to pick a second one, if we're at the top of the second page, which is the man paused at a statue of a stout man in minister's robe. So this is when he starts to see the statue. Does the statue become important?
Later on in the story, yes.
Okay, so then it's okay. I just was curious about that. There are a couple ways that I think if you rearrange the words a little bit, I think it'll be a little bit clearer. But we also mark up the pages with that as well. And everyone can see that too when you log onto our website that we posted below the video. So we each mark it up in our own way, and you can take a look at how that's done. But I think there are just some things that can be just start to finish. And in some places, if you embellish a little bit, then it can sometimes take away from that. I'm trying to find an example. Does someone want to talk about something
Well,
else?
may I mention the statue since you just did, I could dovetail. It says that it's illuminated by spotlights and when it's night because you mentioned sunny afternoon, you mentioned sunlight, and I don't know if the lights were necessary.
Okay, I can have something else.
I mean, it's your call, it may be always illuminated. And he pulls down his hood. Now, I'm imagining the hood becomes a cowl, or would he, why is it blocking his eyes, I guess? Why can't he see? I think a hood would just be around the face and not obscuring his eyes. I'm just curious about his garb. And I don't know if he's a man. I underline man every time because he's the stranger, and every so often you write the man. Is he an alien from another planet? You don't need to answer that. You just know as a writer. And maybe he could observe differences between worlds because he doesn't know about malls, it seems. He doesn't know everything. Maybe he could notice clothing, be wearing different clothing than they. Notice a climate change, language. Maybe he has a box on his body that translates from English to his language and back. So he seems to fit in, but doesn't really. Absolutely your call. The architecture, the food. I noticed that he orders a malt and was stunned that it didn't burn, but you said he found it pleasant or he enjoyed it. It was delicious. So comment on what he's used to drinking or eating and how polar opposite they are.
If we go back to the very beginning too, we know it's a man because the second sentence says the quiet clung to him, like the stagnant breath, and then the man was used to noise and colors.
Oh, I don't know if he's a human, if he's like the people in the dome.
Okay.
That's what I'm asking. Does he differ from them because he's a stranger?
I wasn't thinking fantasy. That's not good.
There you go.
When he's coming down the empty streets in the first paragraph, and in the second paragraph, now and then the stranger's focus was drawn to cheers and jeers that came from all directions. I didn't know what that meant because it was supposed to be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know if there was something going on in his head, or because if he can hear cheers and jeers, then then it's not quiet. So that's a contradiction there. And I'm not sure I understand it. I definitely don't understand it. So that's another thing. Just things like that you want to make sure you inform. Who's next? I think, okay.
Just from a technical perspective. So a couple of things that you want to avoid. So you want to avoid phrases like he knew, he saw, he heard, he looked. So for example, on the first page, have the stranger knew he faced consequences if discovered. Just say the stranger would face consequences. But he also knew his best cover was a sunny social day. But his best cover was a sunny social day. So you don't want to, it just makes it more immediate. You don't have to say he knew, we know he knew, because it's from his point of view. And it just makes it more immediate. So he noticed a malt shop. I would just take that out. There's a malt shop. The stranger found himself staring. Just describe what he looks. He decided, he noticed, he decided. I didn't mark them up.
There's another one on the first page that says the local exited, or maybe it's on the second page. The stranger found himself staring at a black sign on a silver metal pole.
Yeah, just
you don't need
a
the stranger found himself staring at A. You just need a black sign on a silver metal pole, read, see yourself.
Yeah.
And you can, when you start looking at that, it can just make it clean up.
It definitely tightens it up.
Right.
And then I would say, and you do some of this, but if I look on page 3, there are several sentences that start with the stranger. So a lot of the sentence starters are the stranger, the stranger, the stranger. So you want to try to vary your sentence beginners, your sentence starters. Also, you just want to watch the word echo, and you probably heard some of it while you were reading, but a couple places. Again, the stranger is one of them, but there's another spot where you use the word broad.
Yes.
His broad chest, his broad forehead. So, you can hear it more when you're writing it, you don't hear it, but when you read it out loud, you go, oh, wait a minute, I just used the word broad, 2 words ago. And in the end, a couple of people show up, Judd and Nellie, but we have no idea who they are, so it kind of pulls me out, because I don't know who Judd and Nellie are. And then the only other thing was just from the beginning, the quiet clung to him like the stagnant breath of a vicious beast. I wouldn't think of a vicious beast as quiet, so I don't know if that simile is the best one to use. Because, I'm okay with putting a simile there, but maybe something that's menacing and quiet. A vicious beast is menacing, but I don't think it's quiet. Like if you want to say that the silence was menacing, I would just use a different comparison there.
And sometimes when you have a sentence you really love, sometimes you just have to cut it, which is very sad. Sometimes I've had chapters I've had to cut. But sometimes you can use it somewhere else too.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you have to totally get rid of it. Some other, when Jen was talking about, cleaning up words a little bit, then you also have, what? Sorry. There are some words you could either don't need at all, or that you can change to make it a little bit more, have more of an impact. So for example, the stranger had never seen a malt shop before. Well, if he had never seen a malt shop, you don't need the word before. Instead of saying he looked through the windows, you can just say he peered. It's just a better verb. And then, if any of you picture a malt shop or any kind of a storefront, what do the windows usually look like? Floor to ceiling, right? Generally with a big store. So he looked through the large glass windows. You don't need the word large. Because it's just kind of a given that we all know that.
Those redundancies.
Right. We have a blog about this that we have on our website, small cottage. Well, unless you're the Kennedys or something.
Then it's not a cottage, yeah.
Right. Then it's not a cottage. So, and we all do this. Even when we're reading in our writers group aloud, we'll say, oh, I used that word 6 times in 5 pages. You realize it a lot, like Jen said, when you read it out loud. So that helps a lot. My main thing was really just cleaning it up a little so that if you took out some words, like Jen was saying, the other thing was when he first walked into that malt shop, I was a little confused because you were just kind of listing stuff. I think you can take a look at this later, but there are just better ways that you can arrange it so that it becomes kind of part of the conversation as opposed to just listing the whole thing as soon as he walks in. So.
Jump in now?
Dave.
No?
Yes.
Dave.
Go ahead. Tom.
I'd like to approach it from a different viewpoint. Number one, I got tired of hearing the stranger, the stranger, the stranger, the stranger. I figured that the stranger's name meant something important. And if it doesn't, then just use his name up front. All of the other things that happened from the time he blew a hole in the dome till when he introduces his name, I think may not be as necessary to talk about at this time. It's a story about somebody coming from somewhere else to a place to deal with an individual. All this other stuff is window dressing, I think. If you approach it, I would start, my page numbers are different, but I would start, the stranger unzipped his hoodie and tied it around his waist, revealing his own muscular frame and handsome feet. Well, now you're drawn into a character that we can see and understand. He is threatening, just by his appearance. You can back off, there's a mention of the captain. You can say the lacrosse team's captain backed away and because of the implied threat, and go from there. I think the beginning of the story is an anchor to where you're really headed. Go directly to the problem. Have the story start where the story starts, and not the trail that leads to the campfire. You know, start at the campfire. I think that may be a shortcut to getting the story off the ground. I like the idea. The captain can say, "Are you the one who blew the hole in the dome?" Okay, now you've got that. You've introduced that, and then there's a challenge there. And however you want to have Nellie introduced is fine, because it took place very quickly and was done efficiently. And now the story can continue. But I think the other stuff is, I know you love it. And it's so good, as they said before. You love it, and geez, can't you read this? This is essence. This is like smelling the potato chip bag when you first open it. It's the best.
Coffee when you first open it.
Absolutely. It's spaghetti quick, but you have to get rid of some things. I just cut out 41 pages of my novel. The first 41 pages. I said, this is, I had to go in and get resuscitated. It was very difficult. But I saw everyone who said, it's slow, it's not, and I fought them. But I did. So I would suggest that dive right into, you can explain the soda shop, what is it?
Malt shop.
The malt shop, and who the captain is, and then introduce Nellie, and now your story is going. That's my suggestion. A lot of other things here are technical. Things are out of order. She saw something, or he saw something, then she turned around her head. Things are a little bit out of whack, but if you want to take the critical idea of taking some pages, you only have to look at that. Just start right here. That's where as far as I'm concerned, that's where the story starts. And it's in a different page than all of you.
Yes.
Because I do a lot of embedding.
Yes, we
I
have
would add,
five.
I like that idea too. I think that's a really good idea. I still think it's a good idea to look at what we left up, because you can still learn from it.
Yeah, it's what Dave normally calls clearing your throat, right? So,
Yes.
and we all do it, and you said this is your first draft. So all this stuff that happens, the world that you're building, you need to know that, right? So you need to know that, because then the rest of your story is going to be that much better, because you understand where your characters are. So definitely, you needed to write that.
Yeah.
So it's not a waste,
Yeah.
it's just the reader doesn't need it. Do you know what I mean? So, and we all do it. We all do it.
Yeah, I think you did a great job
Yeah.
also. I mean, this is an interesting, enigmatic world. It's mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are some things that seem very commonplace, the houses and, lacrosse teams and things like that, but the names of the days, the fact that this is under a dome.
There's a
the fact-
curfew.
But a dome that doesn't work, because he
Right.
rode
Not
his
that-
motorcycle
no.
right through it.
Yeah.
Actually, what did that do when they broke the dome?
I know, he said
Right.
The alarm went off, we heard it before.
This stranger is not only from somewhere else, but he is not familiar with things like seating in a public
Right.
place, or what a malt shop is. So I think you can play that up more. In other words, have more from his point of view. Right now, we're kind of looking at him from the outside. I think if you can get closer to what he is seeing and he's experiencing, and what his experience and perception are.
So to
For
juxtapose
example-
his worlds to this.
Yeah, exactly. For example, when the guy is mixing up the malt for him. You describe what the guy does, okay? But if you describe it from the point of view of the stranger, it could be very interesting. You know, the man took some powder from the thing. Who knows what that is? And he, you know, from a cold storage facility, he removed something else. I mean, we know it's a freezer and we know that it's ice cream. But from the point of view of the stranger, if he's not familiar with this stuff, show us his unfamiliarity and contrast it to what we know. Okay, it's kind of like an inside, not joke, but like an inside thing that the reader can get. The reader can see, oh, this guy is different. The people around him don't know that, but the reader gets that, and so they get invested in the story by, you know, kind of that shared experience. So very interesting, very, like I said, enigmatic.
The world building is really good.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, so I get the sense that he's somewhat futuristic, and this dome has kind of frozen the 1950s. That's kind of what I got. So
Well, swing
that's what
dancing,
you were
that's
going,
the
that's what I
40s.
got.
Daddy-o.
Maybe Daddy-o is the 40s?
Swing dancing
I
is the
think malt
40s,
shops.
Daddy-o is the 50s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you
I
written
know,
about this
because I
book?
was there.
This
And
was actually
lacrosse
originally-
is-
The cross is very
Right.
now. Yeah, the cross is very now.
Oh, did everyone hear that this was originally an animated series?
It was originally saying I wanted to make it like an animated screenplay, and I'm converting it into novels.
Oh.
Wow.
The feedback is really, really crucial, because there's a lot of stuff that can happen when you're saying, okay, I'm giving up on that, let's translate it to this.
Oh. Do you have any questions for us?
I think everything makes sense.
Oh, good. Yeah.
This reminds me of Stephen King's Under the Dome. Not the storyline, but just the concept of the
Yeah,
dome.
yeah.
It reminds me of the
He takes
gunslinger. Stephen
Oh.
King's The Gunslinger,
Yes.
but because all you do is hear the gunslinger, the gun, you know, walk through the desert. That's how we start.
We're in Maine, Jen and I get bonus points for mentioning
go.
Stephen King. We love you, Stephen. But I'm wondering two things. Would he take a motorcycle? Would he have some other vehicle to break through the dome? And then he mentions the gaping
Oh, I like the
hole.
motorcycle.
Oh, it's fine, I'm just
It makes
curious.
him cool.
Excellent. Oh, well, cool, we want a cool stranger. Before they discovered the hole, it left in Plainsville's precious force field. I'm wondering what could leak out, or what could get in. Please delve into that, I'm curious.
Yeah, there definitely is a get-in.
Okay,
good.
excellent. Say no more, as the Monty Python crew says. Excellent, say no more.
Yeah, so I like what Dave said about starting there. It was harder for me to comment on this one because I had more technical than anything, and sometimes when it's technical, we brought some of it up, such as, you know, just cutting down, they're just words you just don't even, yeah. And it's kind of nice to see that the more you're part of a group or a writer's group, or you hear that kind of feedback, it just becomes very natural to cut out words like he wrote, or words like large that you often don't need. It's really surprising. I'll do a search on my manuscript. I use the word small 50 times.
Yeah.
You don't even realize it. It's actually better to do something like that later. You don't have to worry about it necessarily while you're
Second
writing,
piece or
like a
something.
second draft.
Yeah.
And people will tell you if they read, they'll let you know. And they'll be glad to let you know.
Yeah, and you'll be doing it right up to the end. I just finished the final draft of my novel, and even then, I'm like, how many? And I read through it one more time. I'm like, how many times am I going to use the word continued? We're going to add that to the list.
Oh, okay.
Like a
I have a
thousand.
list,
I had to go
yeah.
through. Really, continued
Yeah.
again? You continued laughing. So
Just, how about
you'll
just?
do it all the way to the end. Really.
Yeah.
You will.
No, but it's good, clear writing. And
Yeah.
Yes.
Strong writing.
my hat's
Yeah.
off to you. If you're adapting a screenplay to this, the screenplay is just dialogue. So you have added, all kinds of description and, like you said, world building to this. So that's terrific to be able to do that.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having me.
I'm really glad you could come. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us today on this episode of Writers Infusion. We will see you next time. Keep writing. Okay.